Hey everyone, my name is Sean Anderson and I am a second year anesthesiology resident now based in San Diego, California. So although I'm doing my residency in anesthesiology, I chose to do a transitional year prior to starting my anesthesiology training, and I decided to do that in my hometown of Las Vegas, and now I have officially moved to San Diego to start the anesthesiology part of my residency. So I just finished what was a pretty big move. Now moving for medical training is something that many of the people going down this path will have to experience, whether you are a medical student starting residency, a transitional or prelim resident starting their advanced program, or you're a resident that is going on to fellowship. Moving is just part of the journey. However, moving is very expensive and I am now on the tail end of it. So I wanted to make this video to kind of break down some of those expenses, some of the things that were unexpected, and my advice for people who are going to be in this position. So I'm gonna break this video down into various categories of cost, but we'll keep a running total going so you guys can see how much this adds up to, because again, as someone who is really going through the moving experience for the first time, some of this was expected, but some of this was very unexpected, and I've spent a lot of money these last couple of months. So let's dive into it. Now let's start off by talking about house or apartment hunting and rental application costs, because that was pretty much where the journey started. Now for me, I had a couple of non-negotiables. I was okay with either a house or an apartment, but I wanted to make sure that whatever situation I chose was good for me and my dogs, because I'm coming here with my two pups, Chip and Chewy. So I wanted to make sure that they were somewhere where they would be comfortable. Basically for me, that means I needed a place with a backyard and a doggy door, which is exactly what I got. I also wanted to be within 15 to 20 minutes of the various hospitals that I would be working at. You guys might want to be closer. You might be okay with being further. I would look into what some of the other current residents are doing and what the different call schedules are like, because if you're on call, you probably want to be not that far away from the hospital. I also wanted to make sure that I had off-street parking, preferably a garage, because I have an electric vehicle, so I want to be able to charge at home. So for my primary searches, I actually used Zillow, which was really good because you can stratify by these various criteria that you have. And so Zillow has this $35 one-time fee that allows you to send out as many applications as you want for a month. So I chose to do that. Now there were some properties on Zillow that would send us to like a third-party application fee, and I just did not like that. I don't know why. I feel like if you're gonna be on Zillow, just use Zillow's application. So I chose not to apply to any of those properties if they required me to do that. You guys might feel differently. Another way that I looked for houses and apartments was actually through Facebook groups. There's actually tons of them for people that are specifically looking for rentals in various areas. So I was able to find like San Diego rentals or San Diego roommates or something like that. And there's always people that are posting houses for rent, rooms for rent, and that was really awesome to just see like long lists of what was available. The thing with the Facebook groups though was that I think it was better for situations where people that were already living in a house maybe were moving out of their room, so they needed someone to take over their lease, or if you had roommates and one of them was moving out, you'd post on there and say that you had a room for rent. I didn't find a lot of like houses for rent or like fully vacated apartments for rent, unless like the landlords were going on there and posting them. But I still feel like there were a lot of leads, and you guys might be in a position where you just want a room for rent that's cheap and you don't have dogs or a bunch of stuff that you need to bring with you and you don't mind sharing living spaces. That would be a phenomenal place to look. For me though, I again kind of wanted something a little bit bigger. I moved here with my best friend who also has dogs, so we just knew that we needed our own place, and so Zillow was just better for that. But again, you guys might be in a totally different situation. And another way that I got leads was actually through my program and co-residents. They would actually email us a few, leads from current residents that are moving out of their place or had a room for rent, or if they were graduating residency and going somewhere else, then they might have a house for rent. So that's something your program might do. And if they don't, you could probably reach out to them and say, hey, do you know of any of the current residents that are vacating their space, and look into that. I actually almost chose to rent an apartment because of the recommendation of a current PGY3, but again, with the dogs, it just wasn't the most optimal situation. Now the next category of spending were the trips that I took to view various houses and apartments. Now I'm coming from Las Vegas, which is only a 5-hour drive away. So that was quite an easy weekend trip. And what I did was basically line up maybe 7 to 10 different tours with apartment complexes and landlords over the course of like a 3-day weekend. And so then I drove out here and just did that for a few days. Now, being 5 hours away, I was able to drive my car, but you guys might match somewhere further across the country and have to fly there and then also take Ubers to everywhere you go. So that's something to factor in. Again, my expenses are going to reflect the driving. So for that trip I took, I stayed for 3 nights and it was about $200 a night, so $600 total. And I drove my EV, which cost me about $80 of charging. However, Eddie drives a gas vehicle and he's been making the trips back and forth as well, and he spends roughly $120 on gas for a round trip. He drives a Mazda CX-5, I wanna say. So I don't know if that gives you guys a gauge of his fuel economy. So depending on the car you drive, your mileage may vary. And then while I was there, I obviously wanted to do some exploring around the area. I didn't just want to like apartment hunt, right? So I spent probably about $40 to $50 per day on things like food, entertainment. Again, I wanted to get to know the area. You guys could probably save money by bringing groceries, eating at cheaper places. And there's probably other expenses I had during that trip that I literally just can't even think of, like parking costs for various places or little things that I would buy here or there. But $40 probably roughly covers my daily spending. So like I said, guys, moving for residency has been very expensive, so I've been trying to save money wherever I can, which is why I was so excited that Rocket Money wanted to partner up for a video. Rocket Money is a personal finance app designed to help you manage your finances and save money. Whether you're new to money management or just tired of manual spreadsheets, Rocket Money helps you take control of your finances. After I signed up for Rocket Money, I realized that I was still paying for a gym membership back in Las Vegas, paying for a car wash membership back in Las Vegas, and I still had an HBO Max membership from when I was binge watching The Pit like several months ago. And this money's just been coming out of my account every single month without me realizing it. Rocket Money automatically makes a list of all of your subscriptions so that you can keep track of them all in one place. And you can cancel the ones you don't want anymore with just a few taps. And what's really cool is Rocket Money may actually be able to get you a refund on some of your lost money. With Rocket Money, you can also create a customized budget in literally seconds. The app identifies your top spending categories and provides helpful insights on how you can stay within the budget. They also notify you when you have upcoming charges or when your budget is low so that you can avoid overdraft and late fees. It's seriously such an incredible platform to help you save money, and as a resident who just moved to a very expensive city, I really appreciate that. So if you're ready to start saving money and join over 5 million people who have started using Rocket Money, then make sure to click the link in my description box below so that you can start your free trial. You can also scan the QR code right here on the screen. I love tools like Rocket Money that help us manage our finances. It's not just appreciated as a resident, but it really is good for anyone who is trying to save some money. Again, make sure to check out Rocket Money. They've helped me save, and I think they can help you as well. And thank you so much again to Rocket Money for sponsoring this video. Another expense that I want to mention here though is on the drive to San Diego to do that apartment and house touring, my windshield cracked, so I had to repair it as soon as I got back. And that was nearly $1,500. And I know that is not a typical fee of moving, but it is good to mention that things can happen at any time. And I highly recommend starting to set up an emergency fund as early as possible. The moment I started residency, I personally set up an emergency fund and a moving fund that I contributed to with every single paycheck. And I'm so glad that I did, because did the moving expenses suck? Yes. Did cracking my windshield suck? Absolutely. But did I have the funds to pay for the move and pay for the repairs? Yes, because I had the foresight to set money aside from day one of work. Now fast forward a couple weeks, none of the places that I toured on my San Diego trip panned out. All of the landlords went with other tenants. The apartments I looked at, I ultimately decided were just not a good fit for my dogs. And so I was getting a little bit discouraged until the landlord of the house I'm in now reached out to me and asked if we were still interested in moving in. Now this house checked all of our boxes. It had the backyard for the dogs. We could insert a sliding doggy door in. We have a garage that I can charge my vehicle in. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, so super comfy for me and my friend Eddie. However, I did not actually even get to see this house in person. I actually did a virtual tour of it while I was still in Las Vegas because it wasn't available for touring while I was taking my San Diego trip. And that's something you're gonna have to consider. Like if you're still in your home state, still finishing up medical school, or you're entering your residency, you might not have time to travel. I was on a busy medicine rotation where I was working 6 days a week. Eddie was working full-time as well. Neither of us could take weekend trips to come and see one single property. So I kind of had to trust my gizzard a little bit and rely on the virtual tour, which is sketchy, but again, a reality of moving from another state. At that point, we were also pretty desperate. We almost considered just taking taking an apartment or even taking this option that we had for a super temporary lease where we'd have to move out in like 3 months, but we were like, hey, maybe that'll give us enough time to find a better place while we're physically there. That's how desperate we were getting, but luckily this house panned out, and even though we took a gamble on it, it is absolutely incredible, and we are both so glad that this landlord offered us to live in his property. Now let's talk about the rent. So again, I am in San Diego, California. This city is known to have notoriously high rent, and for what we wanted out of a living situation, we knew we were gonna have to pay a little bit more than what some other people might be able to pay if they are able just to get a 1-bedroom place and don't have to worry about pets. So in that context, our rent is $4,250 per month. So when we paid first month's rent of $4,250, we then had to pay another $4,250 for the security deposit. So our first payment in May was a total of $8,500. We did get very lucky though, because the landlord did not charge us an additional pet rent or pet deposit. So they kept the rent baseline even with the dogs. But if you have pets, most places that you guys look at will charge an additional pet rent per month or a pet deposit when you start renting the place. So again, we paid $8,500 to secure the place, and you know, Eddie's been working throughout his 20s, so he had money saved up. Like I said earlier, I took an intern year in Las Vegas, a transitional year, and I strategically ranked that number 1 so that I could live at home during intern year and save up money for my move a year later. I specifically had a bucket in my high yield savings account where as soon as I started residency, I contributed to until I had about $10,000 in it that I knew could be allocated for any and all moving costs. Now I'm very glad that I was able to do that, but that is absolutely not the case for most medical students that are coming out of medical school and have to move straight to a new city for residency. Most medical students have to rely on their student loans to make that deposit. So if you're taking out loans, I highly recommend you set aside some of it for this moving cost. And I even have friends who have had to take out personal loans to cover these moving costs. Honestly, I feel like this is kind of more of a failure of the medical education system. I kind of wish that big organizations like the AAMC would maybe advocate for some sort of moving stipends for medical students to help them do this, because if I had to come straight out of medical school and pay $8,500 to secure a place, I don't think that I could have done it. I don't think most people could do that. And again, I think that that is one of the things that we do that sets medical students and new residents up for failure financially, is we expect them to suck it up, take out more loans, and dig a deeper hole of debt. There needs to be more advocacy about this for sure. Oh, another cost I actually had to pay at the exact same time was my California medical license fee, which was about $1,500, which is something that my program will reimburse to me next month after I've started. However, it's still a cost that I had to fork up prior to that and will be on my credit card statement in like 3 days. So I have to have the money for that, right? So again, reimbursements are great, but you still need to pay the money prior to being reimbursed. All right, okay, so we secured the place. Our lease started on June 1st. Now it's time to move in. Here are the move-in costs. First and foremost was the U-Haul. We rented a truck that Eddie and I were able to load all of our big furniture and heavy items into. You guys can actually check out that vlog. It was a couple weeks ago. Super, super fun. And the total for my U-Haul rental was about $360 for 3 days, where I was able to pick it up in Las Vegas, drop it off in San Diego. However, I also paid about another $300 in gas, which was absolutely insane. And that was just to move from Las Vegas to San Diego. That's not a far move. I have other friends that are residents that moved like 13 hours away and drove a U-Haul that entire way. So you can only imagine what that ended up costing. And now that we were renting a place, we also had to get renter's insurance. So I got the Allstate renter's insurance plan that I was able to pay, I think $100 $279 for an entire year. And that actually allowed me to put Eddie under my insurance rather than us getting our own individual insurances. So that was actually a good setup for us. We then also had to start paying internet, which is about $61.25 per month. I got Spectrum, so there's no like installation cost. They literally just drop it off at your door, but that includes like having to pay the rent for the modem. And then of course we have electricity, gas, water, which we haven't had to pay a bill yet, but the estimate from the landlord is it probably comes out to roughly like $200 a month. So this is all very much adding up. I'm definitely probably over like 10 grand by now, I'm sure. So now we've moved things in, we have insurance, we're paying utilities, but we still needed to buy stuff for the house. Now this is where you can start to create your own budget. Like I said, I had a moving fund that was for things like my first month's rent and security deposit and U-Haul and everything, but there was also money in there that I knew I was gonna want to use for things like furniture. And so I had kind of this budget in my head for those expenses. Now, because you can create your own budget, you need to then decide, do you want to buy completely new furniture when you start residency? Which I can see the logic in that. You're starting a new phase of your life, you're moving to a new place. Why not get some new stuff? You know, be cozy for a few years. I'm totally on board with that. But you also might be someone who already has a bunch of furniture and plates, utensils, everything you need for a house and are just gonna move it with you, so you might not necessarily need all that. Or you might be someone who is okay with buying used stuff from places like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, which I also highly recommend. For Eddie and I, we saw this as our chance to start a new life here in California and, you know, go on a new adventure. So we actually tried to move quite minimally. We didn't bring a lot of furniture with us besides our beds and our dressers, and pretty much everything else we bought here. And again, that was just a choice that we made. We wanted to feel this new sense of adventure. However, I was talking to DePaul and I know that he brought a lot more stuff from his current house. Eddie and I were a little bit more in the middle of things though. Even though we wanted new stuff here, we still did use Facebook Marketplace for a lot of things because there were just straight up things that you don't need new. Like you can buy it used and it's probably still good enough. For instance, I got these bar stools from Facebook Marketplace. I got 3 of them for 40 bucks, which is way cheaper than any of the bar stools that I saw that were new. I also got a coffee table yesterday for 40 bucks and it's super nice. It's made of really, really nice wood. Great condition, and again, one of those things that I don't think it would have made sense to buy just completely new. I also spent $450 on the couch, which was also used from Facebook Marketplace, just super easy to clean. It was in really good condition. And then I also spent $300 on a bed frame that I bought off of one of my co-residents here. I brought my mattress from Las Vegas, but Eddie decided to buy a new mattress from Costco, which cost him about $500. We also bought a brand new carpet from Amazon, which was $130. And then I had to buy this doggy door insert here, and that was about $150 from Amazon. Again, there's some stuff that is worth buying new for sure, and then there's some stuff that I think you totally get used. You just have to decide that more for yourself. And then there's a bunch of miscellaneous expenses that I'm probably not able to even think about. Things like cleaning supplies, laundry baskets, trash cans, groceries. A lot of these things you could probably bring from home, but you're also going to need to buy when you move into a new place. And I've been here for like a week now, and I am constantly realizing things that I need that I did have back home that I don't have here that I need to go out and buy. And I'm basically just keeping a running list so that every time I go to the store, I can buy some of those things. Those expenses we probably spent at least like $300 on. And that roughly covers most of the moving costs at this point. I have the total somewhere on the screen, but this is probably well over $10,000. But now that we've covered the costs, let's talk about some moving tips. Firstly, give yourself enough time to move. If you're a medical student, then you're matching in March, so you know where you're gonna go for residency at that time. Start looking. Start apartment hunting, start house hunting, because you only really have like 2.5 to 3 months before you need to be moved in. And I know it sounds like a lot of time, but you really want to find a place that's right for you. Since I did my intern year back home, I started browsing around February, but then started seriously looking in April. Now, Eddie and I decided that we wanted to start renting June 1st so that we can move things in throughout the month of June before I started my advanced program in July. However, we might have been willing to start renting earlier, like mid-May or beginning of May, if we found a spot that was absolutely perfect for us and we wanted to secure. Luckily, we did not have to do do that, but it might be a consideration that you have to make, especially if you have certain non-negotiables or you have a family that you really want to just get settled into the new place. I also recommend taking the time to go to the city that you're gonna move to for residency and look around and get a feel for the place and the environments and the areas of the various neighborhoods you might live in. For a lot of us, that might not be as practical, especially if you're a medical student with rotations going all the way up until graduation, or you're a resident that's doing a transition or intern year and say you're on busy rotations like medicine, ICU, surgery, leading up to the move. But if you can do it, I definitely recommend it. And then also make sure that you actually give yourself enough time to settle in. I chose to officially move out to San Diego 2 weeks before I started my advanced program. I actually took PTO at the end of my intern year so that I could come out here early and not have to worry about being on rotation, which meant that I got less vacation time during my intern year. But I think it's totally worth it because I think it would just really suck to move to a totally new city and be just moved in and then also have to start working. I think that you should get some time to get used to the new routines, the new environment, all before you actually have to hit the ground running. Next up, I want to talk about financial planning. Now, finances are huge and physicians are just notorious for being terrible with their finances. Now, it's not necessarily our fault. I think that the system sets us up very poorly for being financially savvy, and that's just a result of the medical education system and being unemployed for so long, relying on loans for so long. Like, how could you get financially savvy? It only makes sense that we're not. However, I do believe that you can take some of it upon yourself to get more educated in and be more responsible about. For example, making sure that you have an emergency fund and a moving fund, which I started day one of residency contributing money from every single paycheck into until I hit certain emergency fund goals and moving fund goals that I felt very comfortable with. But obviously that was a situation where I lived at home and was able to do that. If you are a medical student taking out loans, then I would recommend taking some of those loans and setting those aside for those various funds so that you're not just blindsided when you have to go through this process. Also, if you have resources, you should use them. If you have family support, use the family support. And use additional resources like Rocket Money to make sure that your spending in other categories is low so that you're able to save that money. So again, plan ahead and make sure that you have money set aside for when you need it. Now, I want to end on a positive note because it's good to remind ourselves that this is exciting. This is actually a lot of fun, and we are so lucky to be choosing careers that allow us to move to new places to do our residency training in. I know we can get caught up with the scariness and the logistics, and sometimes that just ends up with us not appreciating what we've accomplished and all of our hard work. If you focus on the scary stuff, you'll miss the exciting part and the growth that comes with moving and residency. As a medical student, this is your chance to finally change things up after 4 years of grinding it out in medical school. I know that I was absolutely craving a change by the time that I applied to residency, and now that I'm physically in that change era, I am absolutely loving it. One of the common themes of this YouTube channel is to be present and appreciate everything. Now, when you're deciding on where you want to go for residency, I know that we don't really have a lot to say and we're kind of succumbing to the match algorithm. But to an extent, you can at least rank your preferences of residency programs, and I really recommend considering lifestyle and living environment of the various programs, and not just selecting a program because it's super academic and really esteemed, but also because it's somewhere that you can see yourself living and having an enjoyable life, because residency is going to be hard no matter where you choose to do your training or where you match to do your training. But having a good lifestyle around residency is what can make or break your experience. And so I definitely recommend considering that when you're making your rank list. These are years of our lives that we won't get back, and they can be the best years of your life, or you can suffer the entire way. And personally, I would rather make the most of these years and grind it out, but also make sure that I'm having fun every step of the way. All right, guys, that's about all I got. I know this was kind of a long video, but I really wanted to break down all the expenses of moving and also just give my 2 cents to you guys, because I just haven't seen a lot of content talking about this. and it's a huge part of this path. If you guys have any follow-up questions, make sure to comment down below and I will try to answer as many of them as possible. And if you guys just want a follow-up video with a bunch of other things that I didn't address in this one, make sure to let me know as well. That's it for now though. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.